Can Toji Zenin hunt down Yuji Itadori? He's the monster of the Zenin clan, and the first man to ever take down Satoru Gojo. That man is Toji Zenin. He's got the most broken arsenal of weapons within the series, having both the inverted spear of heaven connected to the chain of 1,000 miles and the Soul-Split Katana, meaning that he's more than capable of cutting through all Cursed-Techniques and Sorcerers. Sneaking behind two of the strongest sorcerers during this era seems simple, and taking them both down never really looked easier. But there's another physical monster, an awakened sorcerer who took down Ryomen Sukuna and the closest to controlling the Sparks of Black. Yuji Itadori. He's one of the modern day strongest and definitely the student of Satoru Gojo. You can sense potential capable of rivaling Sukuna. Both have insane arsenals, godly physical power, monstrous mentality, and are two of the fastest characters within the entire series. We're gonna make Yuji his target and we'll give Toji some time to prep just like Gojo. Can Toji Zenin hunt down Yuji Itadori? We'll be getting a better example for what Toji might do, what strategies he might try, and what fighting patterns he might follow by asking Gojo himself. Now, normally I can't talk to Gojo unless I'm dreaming, but using this app called Talkie, I'm able to have really advanced conversations and pretty much talk to what would exactly be like Satoru Gojo. Talkie is also the sponsor of today's video, and I highly recommend you check out Talkie for these exact reasons. After downloading Talkie from the link below, you can chat with AI versions of your favorite characters, and trust me, every AI model is far more sophisticated than I thought. Genuinely, out of most apps like this that I've ever tried, in my opinion, Talkie creates the best recreation of what these characters would be like, and it feels the most realistic out of any of them that I've ever seen. The app itself is so unbelievable that I actually can't believe it's free. Chatting with your favorite video game, anime, and movie personalities never felt so realistic. Talkie has over 100,000 characters, which is more than I can even believe, and they're all completely free. But if you aren't interested for whatever reason in talking to Toji Zenin or Satoru Gojo or even Suguru Geto, then Talkie also supports many customizations to nearly instantly find your best AI companion. Deciding tags and writing a little backstory is all it really takes. Creating your own character is incredibly simple, and trust me, you will be done in just a couple moments. You don't even really have to be too specific when creating this character, because one thing that's really cool and really special and unique to Talkie compared to everything else that I've seen is its ability to adapt to interactions. While I'm actively telling Gojo about my day, he's able to remember and even tell me exactly what I've already told him. He's even gone as far to give me his actual opinion on some stuff that I told him earlier in a very Gojo-like manner. If you ever did want to speak to any of these characters or even create your own, I highly recommend checking out Talkie. It's not even really just texting, but actually hearing these characters speak and their tones change adds another level of personality that I could never even imagine.
When will you learn you're no match for me? Know your place.
It's honestly pretty game-changing when it comes to immersive storytelling, but I highly recommend that you download Talkie down in the description below or in the pinned comment. Toji Zenin has been given a job, and his mission is to find and exorcise Yuji Itadori. Making preparations against opponents without the six eyes like Gojo is definitely less complicated, but trying to achieve that same result with Itadori really isn't so simple. It took Gojo literal days on end to finally feel safe turning off Infinity, and by the time that happened, Gojo had already been drained from constantly using his technique for 3 days on end. Toji did create the illusion of safety by removing his previously placed bounty on the target, but doing the same wouldn't drain Itadori the same way since he's not constantly maintaining something like the Limitless. And coupled with his ability to keep moving forward despite what's going on within his own mind, it makes it that much harder. Despite emotional distress, pain, and even brutal damage, he never stops fighting. Let's assume that Toji would know all publicly kept information about Yuji and even some private information kept within the Zenin clan. There's not really much to know besides him being Sukuna's vessel. He's only recently awakened both Shrine and Blood Manipulation, but that happened within the barriers of the Culling Games. Itadori is probably one of those cases that Toji wouldn't have much intel on beforehand. There's the small chance that Toji might be cautious about slashing techniques due to Itadori being Sukuna's vessel, but that's only because Jogo knew about the slashes, and that doesn't necessarily mean that Toji would too. But considering Mei streamed the entire Gojo vs Sukuna showdown, it's highly unlikely that Toji wouldn't realize that the current vessel isn't Yuji, considering that the current vessel on screen that he's watching fight Gojo is his literal son Megumi. Aside from location, which doesn't really matter, there's not really much preparation that could be done when hunting down Yuji. Assuming that Yuji's been noted for his insane raw speed and power, Toji might be a little bit extra cautious beforehand, but there's really not much he can do to counter specifically Itadori the same way he did with Gojo. Toji Zenin would likely enter the battle remaining hidden, and without a single ounce of cursed energy, that means that this strategy is very problematic for Itadori. Sensing before seeing is the standard for those who are capable according to Nanami, who taught this concept directly to Yuji. Cursed energy based sensory tree is always the default method for tracking opponents. You'll try to visually identify targets by cursed energy before literally seeing them. Since Toji has absolutely no cursed energy, he's impossible to identify and can't be located. When initially stabbing through Gojo, Toji's katana passed through like a sewing needle through a knitted sweater. He figured that strike should have taken down Gojo, but failed because Toji is apparently rusty. That means that this strike would normally be perfected and easily finishing targets. Using this normal katana that hasn't been infused with any cursed technique and cursed energy made this weapon impossible to identify, just like Toji himself. Entering with the same plan could increase his chances of sneak attacking Yuji. Aside from that blaster, Toji's katana is the best weapon for entering via sneak attack. Toji's speed is already noteworthy within itself, but Maki potentially continuing to upscale his placement among the fastest in the series makes this even greater. She's now stated to be his literal equal after defeating Naoya. Anti-Toji fans would typically argue that Maki surpassed him during the month-long time skip between Gojo's unsealing and the Shinjuku showdown, meaning we couldn't use her performance against Sukuna for scaling Toji because she got unquantifiably stronger. It's not only never stated that Maki got stronger and trained, but the idea of Maki being able to grow in general is very debatable. While once having some cursed energy leading to her potential never fully within reach, she's now completely without any negative cursed energy, just like Toji Zenin. Since then, she's become fully realized, possibly implying that there's nothing more to achieve through heavenly restriction and that this current Maki is now fully complete. We know physical ability within Jujutsu Kaisen has its own ceiling and that you're supposed to develop and train your curse technique to avoid stunting your growth, but that's obviously not applicable for Maki. Depending on your interpretation, it would seem like Maki can only grow stronger by strengthening her binding vow that can't be done with training and that has already been maxed out, therefore making Maki Zenin now completely and fully realized. It's definitely possible that heavenly restriction not only raised her physical strength, but also her power ceiling, but we wouldn't know exactly. Sukuna also doesn't mention Maki's power changing between these 2 points whatsoever. Overall, scaling back Toji with Maki using her feats in Shinjuku could serve as the highball scaling if you really care that much anyways. But just for the sake of this video and the sake of simplicity, we're gonna say that both of them are equal, but not much of that really changes the outcome. Before getting into anything really controversial, overall both of these characters' speeds should be similar at bare minimum. Neither is just blatantly speed blitzing the other or massively scaling above. Toji and Yuji should be around the same tier considering Maki's placement with the other heavy hitters, which I'll get into later in the video. Determining the outcome mostly relies on finding out which fighter edges out the other instead of finding massive gaps between their scaling. It might sound like one of them is getting massively downplayed, but just remember that if either is slightly faster, it's definitely not by anything crazy. What's most notable about her encounter during the Shinjuku showdown is her performance against Sukuna, but more specifically during the narrator's statement regarding his interest. Sukuna's cursed energy wavers depending on his interest between opponents. According to Ryomen, it's obvious that he hasn't gone all out. In other words, Sukuna's power level is adaptive based around his motivation for crushing his opponents. When brawling with Maki, the narrator claims that Sukuna was brought to true ecstasy for the first time since his fight with Kashimo, Yuta, and even Higuruma. None displayed the necessary qualities to push himself in ways that would interest Sukuna. Maki Zenin piqued that interest. Sukuna believes that Maki's very existence contradicts Jujutsu. It denies the meaning of sorcery. He believes that going forward, this fight will determine the truth of strength. What is actually worth developing, harnessing physical power or unparalleled Jujutsu? Proving that hypothesis was Sukuna's role. She was the first person to make him feel obligated to act for something bigger than himself. This all led to Sukuna landing his very first Black Flash, something that hadn't happened even against Satoru Gojo. Yuji Itadori has one of the most impressive performances against Sukuna. He's clearly one of his strongest opponents, but you also can't really ignore the obvious. His output constantly weakens with every punch that Yuji throws. Essentially, the earlier that you would fight Sukuna before most of these negative effects have been placed on him, you would be fighting the stronger version of Sukuna. Maki had fought Sukuna after Yuta and Yuji, but Ryomen's statement is the foreshadowing for Sukuna's power rising beyond anywhere where it's been, including his time against the Kotsu. Narrator explicitly states that Maki's existence is ecstasy compared to Yuta being an appetizer. Obviously, Maki reached this point because of the properties of Maki's strength being completely derived from physical power and not from Maki being more powerful. It's not because Maki is stronger than Yuta and was able to bring out more of his true power, because that's not at all the argument that I'm making. While Sukuna can maintain his footing while severely nerfed and willingly holding back against Yuta, Rika, and Yuji up until he's caught off guard by his own technique, Maki is keeping up with Sukuna and even knocking him around before taking a direct hit from Black Flash. Sukuna's heart and soul was stabbed with the Soul-Split Katana before this interaction, leading to him being forced to keep his heart forcefully beating through cursed energy. Maki questioned if Sukuna can keep that up while fighting against her, and he mentions that he's not having any trouble whatsoever. Maki also blocks Sukuna when he's not healing himself later with the reverse curse technique either. She blocked both the charge attack and the Black Flash, but was then overpowered and leading to her being taken out. Yuji later on awakens through Black Flash, but it's hard to scale himself back from this power-up. His only opponent is Sukuna, and he's actively getting weaker with every strike, so we can't really say much about his performance relating to other past interactions. Throughout their fight, Sukuna lands 2 black flashes. This placed him within the zone described by Nanami from reaching the sparks of black. Sukuna is constantly losing output between each punch and dismantle landed by Itadori, meaning even if Sukuna is getting stronger throughout each black flash, it's hard to say that he's stronger than any previous point specifically, or really at any point that we can backscale Sukuna. If Sukuna's normal state is graded 10 points, let's say hypothetically, with numbers made completely arbitrarily for the simplicity of the example, his weakened form is now somewhere below that of his previous self. You can't really make any arguments without assumptions when you're trying to claim that Sukuna landing more black flashes or regaining reverse curse technique increased his current power back to the original 10 points or anywhere even in between. I'm not saying it's impossible for Yuji to be fighting the strongest version of Sukuna, but we wouldn't be able to say that for sure without making some type of assumptions for variables that are currently unquantifiable. Even completely disregarding the factor regarding Sukuna's interest, or even better yet, completely being generous and granting that his interest hit greater peaks against Itadori than anybody else including Satoru Gojo. We don't know if this Sukuna at this current point is even capable of outputting that kind of power, bringing him closer to his previous self. Sukuna definitely got stronger while fighting Itadori, but just being realistic, if you want to scale Itadori without making any assumptions, you would have to prove that these new positive power-ups outweigh the already present negatives that are also continuously getting worse throughout the interaction. It's just another argument for Sukuna growing stronger with absolutely no way to scale back Itadori. It's possible that Yuji is faster than Maki, but judging by his performance in Shinjuku, there's nothing that displays that within his performance that we can directly link back with Maki. The last place that we can really scale back Yuji to Maki would be his comparisons to Yuta inside of his domain expansion. Yuji does get faster when awakening, but we don't really know by how much. I'll go over Maki and Yuta's comparisons later in the video, but considering that we don't know how much faster Itadori became, there's not really any way that we can say that it would scale him massively above Maki. Although it is before he awakens and does get unquantifiably faster, but we just don't really know by how much. Maki and Toji also have their own form of what would be considered precognition, and she blatantly said that Toji would have been able to see exactly what she'd been missing. Using the air density and temperature, Maki can feel the scattered surfaces that tell her exactly where incoming attacks are about to strike. Even opponents as fast in comparison to Maki like Naoya, who blitzed Maki, were easily countered and dodged midair after awakening this form of precognition. Overall, this boost is obviously massive and seemingly improving their speeds by reacting faster than ever before, overall making it harder to argue for Itadori. Yuji only gets stronger throughout Shinjuku while also weakening Sukuna. I'm not going to disregard his jump in power whatsoever because it's probably what made this video debatable in the first place, but acknowledging that his performance became increasingly impressive because Sukuna was slowly becoming increasingly more nerfed after his final exchange with Maki means that backscaling is nearly impossible. In short, Yuji should be comparable in speed around Maki's level before awakening and becoming even faster after that, but it's completely up to interpretation for deciding exactly how much faster he's now become. Overall, both characters' speed should be similar even if you do believe that Toji is slightly above. Yuta and Maki are both considered heavy-hitting fighters that were speculated to fight alongside each other, and that wouldn't really be possible if one of them greatly surpassed the other in speed. Fighting alongside those who can't keep up only hinders the ability and strength of the stronger fighter. We can see the same thing with Satoru Gojo. Maki, after getting hit with the black flash and recovering, also continues to keep up with Sukuna. Sukuna later on, after being hit with a multitude of black flashes and all of these being soul punches from Yuji still isn't massively outspeeding Sukuna, and they can definitely still be compared to each other, and this probably goes on until Sukuna regains back his reverse curse technique. Inside of Yuta's domain expansion, he's constantly keeping up with Akotsu and even arguably outspeeding him. This is while given that stat boost that's granted within domains, and before Yuji awakens through black flashes, that greatly improves his performance and overall power. But since we can't really scale back this Yuji like I've said before, we just know that Yuji is capable of performing on this level and even better by some unquantifiable margin. Either way, Maki, Yuji, Yuta, and therefore Toji should all be around the same tier of speed, while it's definitely not as crazy to argue that Toji would be slightly above with precognition. When engaging into combat and entering via sneak attack, Toji Zenin will make his first move against Yuji Itadori, entering with his normal katana to maintain his invisibility and probably following the same strategy as back then against Satoru Gojo. Toji might manage to pierce through Itadori if he's completely unaware of his presence, but this shouldn't be game ending. Yuji will begin shifting his cursed energy into positive energy using the reverse curse technique. He's gonna begin healing nearly immediately even if the strike is meant to be fatal. He's made full recoveries from damage even more life-threatening before. If Toji attempts the same attack pattern as back then, it's nothing capable of taking down Itadori. When multiple cleaves that even ripped apart his abdomen, despite these attacks coming from Sukuna himself, Yuji still uses the reverse curse technique to heal from damage within moments, then accounting for his ability to keep fighting despite immense pain, and it's not like Yuji would be finished off with just a normal katana strike strike alone unless his brain is then targeted. But then again, Toji has never initially went with this strategy before, and then on top of that, not knowing about his reverse curse technique makes it even more unlikely that he'd be starting out striking his brain, because that just blatantly wouldn't be in character. Essentially, the reverse curse technique is just multiplying the standard negative cursed energy into positive energy. This uses the same logic in real-world multiplication when negative values are multiplied together. Cursed energy is initially negative and starts with 2. Multiplying them together creates 1 positive cursed energy. The reverse curse technique is just a method for converting positive energy from the natural negative. Naturally, the cost for activating this technique would be increasingly high compared to normal techniques, because it takes 2 negative cursed energies to create 1 positive energy, and we've seen that effect hold back even stronger sorcerers with even bigger cursed energy pools. While you could argue that follow-up attacks from Toji would be the thing that drains Yuji over time, he doesn't really have the same problem because he's also using his other curse technique, blood manipulation. Choso explains that blood can be converted directly from cursed energy. Neither him or Yuji experienced the massive cursed energy consumption, which is normally problematic. Overall, this initial sneak attack, while threatening, shouldn't end this encounter, and it's actually just the beginning. It wouldn't take long for Yuji to realize that he's just like Maki. Both are heavily restricted, and that gives Itadori an advantage. Considering his knowledge of Maki Zenin, who's just like Toji, that means he would already know that certain strategies aren't effective, like domain expansions. Expanding his domain wouldn't even be attempted, but tracking his opponent would still be another issue entirely. Toji's ability to remain hidden makes predicting his movements nearly impossible. Those who can sense cursed energy, they usually anticipate their opponent's attacks by reading their cursed energy flow. Yuji learned how to do this during the Kyoto Goodwill event and used it effectively against Yuta Okotsu. However, this technique would be mostly useless against Toji since there's no cursed energy to track, overall making it worse for Yuji, who's predominantly fighting his opponents in hand-to-hand combat during those close quarter exchanges. That's not even mentioning that Toji has precognition that I briefly mentioned earlier. While Yuji can't predict his opponent's incoming attacks like normal encounters, Toji Zenin will be using the atmosphere and the small changes between temperature and density to detect incoming attacks. Not to mention the range advantage when bringing out the Soul-Split Katana in the chain of 1,000 miles. The Soul-Split Katana is probably the most lethal option for quickly taking down Itadori. Maki Zenin's sword is the remake of Toji's original blade. It's literally an exact replica of the Soul-Split Katana. Unlike any other curse tool, this katana targets the soul directly, making slicing through any object with a soul instantly targetable, and that includes inanimate objects. Meaning any attack from Toji using the Soul-Split Katana won't just be ripping through his physical body, but also his soul. Yuji can definitely repair his soul using reverse curse technique, just judging by how they describe Sukuna being able to do it, but it would definitely be much more different than just repairing his normal body. Getting cut with soul-based attacks means that Yuji wouldn't have blood manipulation to help mitigate the cost of activating reverse curse technique. Over time, this might be problematic, considering that Yuta was nearly completely drained from overusing reverse curse technique. Yuta's cursed energy pool is described as bottomless and even bigger than Satoru Gojo's, and it's obviously bigger than Yuji's. Yuji would be able to repair his soul, but it would definitely be incredibly inconvenient and very dangerous. But it's not like Yuji is out of options. He just awakened both blood manipulation and Sukuna's curse technique shrine. Both grant him moves that are capable of combating against Toji Zenin. Despite Itadori's ability to master shrine being underdeveloped, it remains effective against heavenly restriction. Combining this power with his awareness of what's going on beyond just the physical body changes everything about his strikes. He's capable of targeting the soul with Dismantle, but because this technique was only recently picked up by Yuji, its cursed energy output is notably lower than normal. These dismantles and blows landed during the Shinjuku showdown were directly linked with separating two souls. More specifically, this was done by attacking the barrier between them. It's not ever explicitly mentioned that he's capable of attacking the soul directly with Dismantle, but you can definitely argue that it's possible considering that Yuji's already attacking the soul when he fights against Mahito. Targeting the area needing positive energy to begin recovering from the damage is how reverse curse technique functions, and is exactly why disconnecting your brain from the body shuts down the reverse curse technique. If you can target your own soul with positive energy by also understanding its contours, you can clearly apply cursed energy beyond physical attacks and even cursed energy based techniques. These dismantles can probably damage Toji beyond just the surface level. However, when it comes to Toji Zenin, this strategy shouldn't be as effective because of the strength that his body has when it comes to relating back to the soul. During the Shibuya incident, he's summoned back to the real world. Toji describes the explanation for his incarnation by saying that the vessel's soul had lost to his current body. The fanbook described Toji's incarnation as a glitch that caused him to incarnate. He then continues to rampage through Shibuya. Either Toji's body is currently operating without any soul, or his body is functioning fully independently without the influence of the soul that's already present. Assuming that Yuji can even damage his soul, and that there isn't some level of soul durability preventing damage from occurring, Toji's body can function seemingly perfectly fine without any soul present or one soul that's clearly weaker than his original soul. Overall, the state of his soul doesn't seem to influence his body boasting lethal battle power, meaning just damaging his soul wouldn't stop Toji Zenin. Then when you remember that Toji's endurance is actually pretty insane, Zenin, it makes it pretty hard to argue that Yuji would be able to output that amount of damage even over time. Maki Zenin took 2 black flashes directly from Sukuna himself and still managed to survive. I literally have no idea why anti-Maki fans use this as a rebuttal, as if Sukuna didn't just hit Maki with his strongest physical attack and he's not the strongest sorcerer in the entire series. It's a pretty ridiculous way to downplay Maki and Toji in all honesty. The only things that have ever been shown to really take down both of these fighters is Toji being hit with a purple and Sukuna hitting Maki with a black flash. That's obviously the ceiling for their endurance and they can't survive attacks on that caliber, but the fact that the ceiling is already that high is pretty insane compared to the rest of the series. It's not like Maki tanked the black flash and that she scales to the black flash and that she can be hit with this attack while taking no damage, but it establishes endurance, a point where Maki can take damage on that caliber and still survive and require time to recover. If you want to make the argument that Yuji would be able to put on this amount of damage over time, then Toji could just be healing passively while the damage is being done. Toji's healing is notably slow, but this is only problematic depending on the rate of damage happening throughout this exchange. Healing between strikes might make it impossible for Yuji to take him down, but again, this depends on other unknown factors, but it's pretty unlikely that Yuji can output damage on that caliber with just one blow, and we don't know the rate that Toji can recover from the damage over time, so it's not necessarily impossible either way, but we just don't know currently. When taking everything into consideration, Toji is either slightly faster or just generally above Yuji, but not by any massive margin. Judging by Maki's speed scaling with Yuta and the other heavy hitters, placing them all around the same level, with some edging each other out. I'm not arguing that they're all equal speeds, but they should be around the same level and definitely not hard blitzing each other. Over time after the initial attack, Toji would likely end up on the higher end of the exchange, leading to Yuji eventually being taken down with the Soul-Split Katana. Then when you remember that Toji's endurance is actually pretty insane, it makes it pretty hard to argue that Yuji would be able to output that amount of damage even over time. Eventually over time, through a very long fight, Toji would eventually end up hunting down Itadori. Unless you believe that the Yuji within Yuta's domain expansion becomes massively outscaled by the Yuji that we see later when he awakens Shrine, then in that case, Yuji would eventually beat Toji over time.